So today we're going to go over the case studies. But first, we're going to do just one of the discussion questions. So if you guys can prepare yourselves to use the chat box, I'm going to bring up our collection. So this was the set from section 3 of the video, and we learned about collectors and whatnot. So all of you should have had the videos completed by today, was the due date, or by class time today. And so back on section 3, what I'd like you to do is use the chat box to answer question number 1 here. In what way is emotion a collector's best weapon? Which emotional tactic would work on you? So they talked about collectors using emotion. So I'd like you to use the chat box and everybody type in your reaction to that. In what way is emotion a collector's best weapon? And which emotional tactic would work on you? So I'll give you a few minutes here to think about that and get something down. So we're doing this question right here, just that one. And when you use the chat box, make sure you're chatting to everyone. The chat box does have a function to where you can chat privately with people, which is fine too. But for this one, make sure you've got the chat addressed to everyone. And then I'm going to open up the chat box dialog, and we'll start to see as they populate. Yeah, Xavier, I'd say you're right. They can use some of their tricks to get you tricked into thinking maybe they're your friend or something, right? Yeah, Joey, in terms of liking the product, they might be able to play off kind of either emotion on how that when they come to collecting. Okay, yeah, the sympathizing and getting you to play along like you're their friend and you're an important part of their life. Make that connection. Yeah. Emotions of scaring you or yelling, or they kind of poke around, I think, to see what will trip your trigger. Yes, a guilt factor, especially once they've developed some sort of connection to you. It's like if they can lay on a guilt trip, like, would you really do this to your mother? And you might be thinking, well, no, I wouldn't do it to my mother, but I'm going to do it to you. But they mentally, psychologically can start chipping away at you. So you have to be tough and be ready for it. The reason we go through this section is just to let you know that they do this intentionally. So remember, most of the people that they're calling have never taken a personal finance class or received any coaching that this is what they do. And so part of this is just if you ever found yourself in this position, or maybe you have a friend or family member that is getting hit up with some of the collections, you could give them some advice to say, oh yeah, no, that's just normal. That's what they do, you know, to get you. So be prepared, have a plan. Part of the ammunition that we have from this class is just having that zero-based budget so that you have a plan. When somebody attacks you like that, you've got a response for them. And I think Dave kind of walked you through some of that. Okay, does anybody have any? I'll just pause for 10 seconds if anybody's got a final comment or a question from the things you've read there on the chat box or otherwise. Okay, so we're going to go into the case studies. So if you guys want to, I'm going to keep my screen open here. Close this for now. And I'm going to close the chat box right now too. So in your material, if you go to chapter 8, let me walk you through this here. That was Michelle. Okay, so in your folders, we have the case studies, just like we were doing in class before. And so on your own screen, if you're logged into your own Buzz account, that way this will get registered right where we need to be. So if you haven't done so already, log into your Buzz account and you can open the case studies from chapter 8 and then click on Michelle and the new car. And when you do that, you'll come to this file here, and I'll keep it on screen. If you end up having some trouble or something, you can do this later. But right now you'll be a little ahead because I'm going to allow you to work on it in class, kind of similar to what we do in class. So here is Michelle. So the case study is right here in front of us. Michelle and the new car. After Michelle graduated from college, she decided to purchase a car. She was doing well with the payments, and things got busy and she fell behind. She started making car payments with her credit card, and now she's behind on both her credit card and car payments. A collector has been calling her at work and threatening to garnish her wages if she doesn't find a way to get current. She is terrified and is considering using her rent payment to make the other payments so the collector will stop calling. So now in your dialog box here, answer questions 1 and 2. Formulate a strategy for Michelle to overcome her fear with the collector. And number 2, is it smart for Michelle to use her rent money to make other payments? Why or why not? And question 3 is, what solutions would you offer Michelle in negotiating with the collector? So for that one, you can just do chat box only, by the way. You won't have to complete number 3 in the other thing. We'll just do the chat box. What solutions would you offer Michelle in negotiating? And while you guys do that, I'm going to move my bird to the other room. He's starting to come to life. He'll probably start squawking here pretty soon. Okay, Brooks, looks like you remember Dave's line, which was a good one about we make a line when we run out of money and that person's below the line. Okay, so Reese, you're thinking maybe fight back with a little appeal to the emotions, or was that still following? Yeah, that was from this one. Okay. Another month. Yeah, Zach, I think you're right on thinking about here's my wages, here's my income, you know, I've got a plan and it is what it is. So having that plan is your most powerful weapon. Most of the people the collectors talk to don't have people who have a plan. So that's definitely a good long-term strategy, is to at least have some sort of zero-based budget together, because then every dollar's got a name and their name might not have the payment that they want. Maybe you can have some of it. So part of the pro rata debt plan that we worked through in the videos was giving all the collectors a little bit of something of whatever's left over. So Rachel, I see you put that up there. Send the pro rata debt plan and just show exactly what you're doing. Because it is a fair way. I think that will help you overcome. A lot of you mentioned the guilt factor, and really it's kind of a fair way that all the creditors are getting a little piece of whatever you have left over. So, okay, so Hunter, with your lump sum, that might be a strategy you can do. You're probably not in a position right off the bat to do it, but you might be able to. You're kind of bringing up a longer term strategy. If you guys have heard of on the radio or on the internet with some blurbs about, you know, we'll negotiate your debt for pennies on the dollar, that sort of thing. Those are real, and debt collectors will entertain a lump sum. That can be depending on the times and depending on the collector, but and your personal situation. If you're close to declaring a bankruptcy, then that lump sum is going to look pretty good. So even if you owe a creditor $10,000, if you're able to scrape together $2,000, they might just do it. The actual strategy for that, though, is to not pay anybody for a while. This is what these places will tell you. And then they'll save up basically a lump sum of money that they'll offer lump sum payments to the creditors. And that's something you can do for yourself. So I usually would not advise somebody who's doing the things we're doing in this class to take that type of strategy. Does anybody have I'll do a 10-second pause again. If you want to unmute and make a comment or a question, feel free. Okay, so let's go on to the next case study. So our next one is Jeremy and the loan. So again, go back to your interface, Jeremy and the loan. And this one, is Jeremy graduated from college 2 years ago with a degree in communications. He landed a great job making 40 grand a year. And he plans to save up enough money so he can purchase a home with 100% down payment. That's a pretty big payment, right? So the whole house. Last week, Jeremy received a call from the bank telling him that he was late making some payments on his loan. The problem is Jeremy doesn't have a loan with that bank or any other bank because he's debt-free. What problem does Jeremy most likely have, and how would you help him resolve this issue? So a couple of you are putting that they might sue them, which is certainly a possibility. But once they find out that Jeremy's not the right person, they probably won't go to the extent of actually suing him. So a lot of the problem is going to end up being on the credit report. Brooks, you make a good point there that the person who did it, if he ignores it, might still be able to go and try to get more credit on your name. That's a good point if you ignore the issue. A legitimate loan, he'd have to get that cleared up. And so as the videos talk to us, the way to do that can be very painful. You guys have all spent probably some time on customer service and waiting for somebody to get back to you, all that time, and then maybe getting passed along from one person to a boss, to another agency. So they say people can spend just hours and hours and hours on the phone. The last thing we want to be doing to try to clean that up. And that's part of the reason that Dave advocates for identity theft insurance. Those companies will do all that work for you. So that's a nice piece of that. Some of my voice things. So Lauren and the apartment, pull that one up.
Are we submitting these case studies? Or
yes.
Are we submitting them later?
Yes, you should be submitting the case studies as we get done. And if I tell you, you don't have to do, like on that last one, questions 2 and 3. You don't have to complete it all the way. Just submit it incomplete. But yes, you are submitting them. It'll be part of your in-class points that we have.
Thank you.
All right, so Lauren here. What about Lauren? Lauren is 19 and never owned a credit card. She plans to move off campus next semester because she's tired of living in the dorm. The apartment complex she's inquiring about runs background checks and views the credit report of all prospective tenants. She knows her credit score is 0, and she's worried that that'll keep her from getting an apartment complex. So do questions 1 and 2. 1 and 2, and you'll be filling these in your form. Do questions 1 and 2. What can Lauren do to improve her chances of getting a low rate at the apartment complex? And number 2, is it a bad thing to have a credit score of 0? That's a big one. You should spend a little bit of time on that one. You can almost write a whole paper on that. Is it a bad thing to have a credit score of 0? Why or why not? Okay, so Hunter, as you guys are starting to get into number 3 here, it would not be a bad idea for her to get a credit card and start making payments on it. Establishing credit is a good thing, as long as she does not get carried away. I don't think that she should get a credit card. Zach says, Dave says it's not a good idea to have a credit card is better than having no credit is better than having bad credit. So that kind of ties in a little bit before, all right? Joey says, I'd say, but only in small things. You know, you want to be careful. Pay off credit and build her credit. If she's smart, she can reap the benefits by using a credit card and paying it off. For example, gas each month, get good deals from credit card companies. I think that Lauren should open a credit card to use only for small stuff, maybe gas and groceries. I don't believe that you can get loans if you have a 0 credit score, says Brooks. I would say she has a good start. Oops, it keeps flipping up on me. Kareem says, I'd say she's got a good start, but a small one, build the credit. Reese says, no, she should not. She is currently debt-free without a credit card and would be more beneficial to have no debt and no credit score and be in debt with a good credit score. Mackenzie says, I think she should open a credit card, establish credit, but I don't think she should use it. for big things. Oh yeah, you want to stay away from the big things. Austin, no, Lauren shouldn't open a credit card. Lauren doesn't need a credit score and she doesn't need a credit card to rely on. There are ways to obtain loans and live at places without having a credit score. She is currently debt-free and should remain that way. Hannah, I don't think she needs to get a credit card. It's better to have no credit rather than terrible credit. All right, so that seems to be a recurring theme for some of you. No, she should not get a credit card, says Madrid, because you can live life successfully without credit. I think that she should get a credit card, says Kason, and buy things she's able to pay off on time so she can establish credit. She could, says Rachel, if she believed she would be responsible with one and use it for a specific thing and also just be fine without it. She needs to build her credibility with renters, and the way to do it is just keep paying the bills she does have on time or early. Maddie says, I think it'd be okay for her to own a credit card and to build up her credit using it on top of gas or groceries. Okay, so we've got, I don't know, I wasn't keeping exact track, but it seems like the class is kind of split. Angel says, I think she can open a credit card and use it. So we went through a bunch of different things. I mean, what would Dave Ramsey say to, let's go to Joey here. Where were you, Joey? Oh, gosh, this is fine print. I need to blow this thing up. Let's see, Joey, the bank. Oh, wait, I went too far up. I think you were one of the early ones on that. And maybe I should go to Joey first. Joey, I don't know if you were disputing Dave or not, but let me just open it up. There was a couple of you too. Do it only on the small things. I'd say at least 3 of you said that, maybe even 4 of you. Brooks, you said it too, only the small stuff. Reese, can you unmute your microphone? You said no, she should not. And I'd like to hear your rebuttal to Joey and Brooks of why you think doing it on the small stuff isn't a good idea. What if you had a friend, I don't know if you're friends with one of these guys or not, but if you had a friend that said, I'm just going to do it for the small stuff, what would be your response?
I mean, I guess you could, like, it wouldn't be a bad thing, but I just feel like it'd be easier to not have to pay any of that stuff off later, even if it's just a few dollars or anything.
Okay. So you're still a little bit waffling on there. So what do you think Dave Ramsey would say if Joey or them called into his show?
I think he'd probably just say that if it's possible, just to not use a credit card at all.
Yeah, I think he would not say if it's possible. He would just say you need to make a choice to not use it. Because it is possible to live without a credit card. That we know for sure if you just live within your own means and wait for things to pay. However, the competing thought would be, well, you're not going to be building up a credit. But what do we need a credit score for? Let me go to, I wish these were a little bit bigger. Let's see, Madrid, you were pretty strong on the no, but I wanted to say well, I guess let me go to Kason. You're not the person I was thinking of, but that's okay. You're kind of on the same vein of thought here, I think. So I think she should go ahead and get a credit card, buy things she's able to pay off so she could establish credit. What does she need to establish credit for?
For like the apartment that she's trying to get, like she could establish credit for stuff like that, or other things that she might, like if she wants to buy a house in the future and has to need a loan for stuff like that, and they have to look at her credit.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit more. So as a landlord, I owned a lot of rental property in the past. How else could you show me that you pay your bills other than a credit score?
By paying cash.
Well, that wouldn't necessarily help at all. So I want to kind of see that you're a person who pays your bills, even though you have zero credit, because you've chosen not to go into debt. But I think there's other ways that you can show you're a person who still pays your bills. What sort of bills would those be? If somebody else wants to unmute and join Kason, you can stay unmuted too.
Like your utilities and stuff like that.
Yeah, your utilities.
Card.
Yeah, good. Your cell phone. There's lots of different types of payments that you make monthly that you can show your payment history to establish it. Now, also as a landlord, if I go in and talk to my tenant, if I had a tenant come up to me and say, excuse me, I'm filling out this application, but I don't do credit cards. I don't have any debt. I pay cash for pretty much everything. But here's a copy of my phone statement that shows I've made my phone bills for the last 18 months and never been late on a payment. Do you look pretty good to this landlord compared to the student who's burdened with a mountain of student loan debt and a car payment and a credit card? Do you look as a pretty good candidate? And you're gainfully employed, by the way. You're working at a job. Do you look like a pretty good person I'd like to rent to? Give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if you're on that one. Yeah, right? So all of a sudden you look outstanding. We can't let our lives be driven by some score, some credit score. We're dealing with real human beings that want to make a profit. If you're a landlord running a company, you want to be profitable. How can you become profitable? Well, if you find a person who doesn't take on any debt and they pay their bills on time, that means you've got lots of income to pay your rent or to pay your mortgage. So what I'm saying applies not only for landlords, but also applies for insurance companies. It applies for banks. It's a little bit different way of looking at it, because if you guys have been looking at the previous videos, we learned that the banking system has established the credit score as the thing to hang our hats on. They've slowly manipulated our thinking that in order to live, we need to have a credit card or we need to take on debt, and that's just not true. And that was part of the myth-busting exercises that we did. So what else would Dave say about buying just the little things, or things that some of you use the wording here, you'll only use it for the things that you'll know you can pay off? What's the problem with that logic? There's actually a fallacy with that thinking that I think Dave would punch a hole in. What's wrong with that? Hannah, let me go to you. You talked about not getting a credit card and being terrible. What could be a problem with buying only small things, or making sure you can pay it off was kind of the language that we saw people using?
I would say that you probably should already have those things, like especially if you're using zero-based budget, you should already have that in your budget. So why do you need to use your credit card to pay it?
Yeah. So you already have the money for it, right? And so, if you're following baby step number 2, what was baby step number 2 again?
Pay off all debt.
Pay off all debt. You're already, if you're following the system, if you guys want to become a millionaire, do the system. I pretty much guarantee you're going to be a millionaire by the time you're about 50 if you follow Dave's system coming right out of OU. You graduate with a degree, you follow baby steps number basically 1 through 4, and you guys are going to be millionaires. If you're not driving around a car that has a debt payment and not being subject to other lenders, when a coronavirus hits and you get laid off from your job, how do you think a 3 to 6 months emergency fund works for you? Do you think you can ride out Corona? Give me a thumbs up if you think you can ride out Corona if you banked 3 to 6 months of your expenses. I mean, today's environment really highlights. My wife and I guess as a case in point, my wife and I, when the corona hit, we're like, okay, well, we'll just ride it out, whatever happens. And by the way, I did get a small pay cut in my OU pay through the form of what's called a furlough. And we also lost our retirement contribution. Remember when we went through the retirement chapter on the matching, and you can't always bank on your employer matching? Well, OU just yanked our matching funds. Now, I'm not mad at OU. You know, that they'll bring it back eventually. But those are the types of uncertainty that you need to self-insure with. You need to use that emergency fund to insure yourself against real life. All right, I thought we were going to get done early, and if I stop right now, it's 9:49. So chapter 8's in the books, folks. Have a good weekend, and we'll start on the next on Monday. I'll stay.